We're 21-9 this year on anytime touchdown picks. That's a 70% hit rate, which is completely insane. So in this video, we're going to go game by game to break down the best touchdown picks for week 4. And we're going to start with the London game, the Vikings and the Steelers. This was an interesting one. As I was kind of working through this, there were a few guys that definitely stood out. You could make an argument for Justin Jefferson. You can make an argument for DK Metcalf. But the guy that I think is going to score in this game and is the best anytime TD pick is Jordan Mason. So Jordan Mason just destroyed Cincinnati, 116 yards on the ground, 2 TDs in just 3 quarters. Also, the Steelers had the 5th highest touchdown rate allowed to running backs. So this is one that I feel pretty good about in this game overall. Like I said, the wide receivers are at least interesting. I'm fading Metcalf in general in this one. The Vikings defense has actually given up the fewest receptions to wide receivers. A couple other ones that I had kind of considered, and one that I think is actually kind of appealing. If you did want to add a dark horse to this, I actually think that TJ Hawkinson is a little bit interesting as well. Pittsburgh has allowed 9.2 yards per target to tight ends. That's 25th in the league, but also they're almost dead last, 13% touchdown rate to tight ends. That's 31st in the league. So if you wanted to go with something that was a little bit more of a long shot and not Jordan Mason, I actually think that TJ Hawkinson is a pretty good bet in this game. Let's move on to the main slate. Washington Commanders at Atlanta Falcons. This one also was a little bit tougher, right? Because if we really wanted to dig into this game, we could probably make an argument for someone like Bijan Robinson, and we could all obviously jump into some of the wide receivers as well. But the one that really stands out to me as the best touchdown pick, even just looking at some of these odds here, is going to be Drake London. So Drake London, let's see if we can grab his touchdown. Drake London, touchdown. So you get a nice multiplier on that on DraftKings pick 6, but London, I think, is just due for a bounce back here. I'm playing this as like basically a positive regression spot for him. The volume that he's been getting has still been wide receiver 1 level. And then Washington has already given up 9.1 yards per target to wide receivers. That's definitely in the bottom third of the league, but a 7.6% touchdown rate to wide receivers as well. So I think that London gets in the box in this one. Bijan is obviously probably the most likely to score in this game, but I think that London and Deebo Samuel was the one that I was kind of wrestling with a little bit here, and I'm going to go with London bouncing back in this game. Since we're always talking about making picks, I'm teaming up with DraftKings Pick 6 to give new customers a deal that you won't want to miss for week 4. When you play $5 or more in your first paid Pick 6 entry, you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. That's right. Play $5, get $50 in bonus picks to keep building your slips and take your shot at big payouts. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, sign up using my promo code HOLKA, and start playing today. If you've been thinking about trying Pick 6, now's the time to get in. Just use my code HOLKA to sign up, and all new DraftKings customers can play $5, get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Let's build some slips. New Orleans Saints at Buffalo Bills. This was another one that I think there's probably a few long shots that make some sense in this game. But if we're just looking purely at matchup and really who I think is the most likely to score in this game, you can always make an argument for Josh Allen to score on the ground. He doesn't need a great matchup for that. But I think that it's interesting to go back to James Cook here, just because the Saints just gave up 2 rushing TDs to Kenneth Walker. They've been giving up touchdowns on the ground quite a bit in general. So I actually think that if I was to pick one in this game, I think it's just going to be James Cook. It's just going to be James Cook. So let's get him in here for a touchdown. So James Cook, like I said, I think we just kind of get I don't know if we'll get 2 from him like Kenneth Walker gave us, but I think he's a pretty good bet to score. The other one that I was actually looking at, if you're trying to find a long shot in this game, was actually Keon Coleman. So if you wanted to go Keon Coleman for a different multiplier, it is a decent matchup here. The Saints have been kind of banged up by outside receivers in particular, and they've given up a 12.9% touchdown rate to outside wide receivers. That's bottom 3 in the league. So if you want the long shot, I think Coleman is right there. But I think James Cook is a pretty solid bet in this game as well. Cleveland Browns at Detroit Lions. Yeah, we're going right back to the sun god here. Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's been someone that we've been going after quite a bit this year. He's obviously leading the NFL with 4 receiving touchdowns. Plus, the Browns have tied for the 3rd most receiving touchdowns allowed to wide receivers this year. So the pieces kind of come together with this one for me. And I think that Amon-Ra is someone too that I want to be thoughtful about because you get decent odds on him here and there, but also there's a couple of games in particular last year where I think he got a little bit streaky, right? Like I think he scored 8 games in a row at one point last year. So I think we're right in the mix of that. If there was another guy that you wanted to go after in this game as like kind of like a long shot, I actually think that Njoku is an interesting TD bet in this game as well, and you can get him for a really nice multiplier. Obviously, Detroit has been kind of just allowing these tight ends to run wild a little bit. Teams have targeted their tight ends at a super high rate against them, fifth highest rate in the league. About 28% of the targets against Detroit have been tight ends, and they've given up a decent touchdown rate as well. A league high touchdown rate, 16.7% touchdown rate against tight ends. So I actually think that Njoku is a little bit sneaky here. So I think pick your poison here. Both these are pretty solid. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the one that I think is the most likely to score in this game. Carolina Panthers at New England Patriots. Yeah, this one was actually pretty tough. So the guy that I wanted to try and find someone on the New England side that I liked through the air. You could probably make an argument for someone like Hunter Henry. But the guy that I was looking at here, so on pick six, we can also do less than on touchdowns here and there, but not for all of them, right? So I think taking less than on touchdowns for Diggs would have made sense. Carolina has basically given up nothing to wide receivers so far, the fewest fantasy points per target allowed to wide receivers through 3 weeks. And the touchdown rate is the third best to the position as well. So if you could get Diggs to not score a touchdown, I think that would be kind of interesting. I think in this game, it's probably going to be Hubbard for me. You still get a decent multiplier on him. It's more of a volume play, and I think this game could be a little bit gross. Carolina getting one in on the ground is what I think is most likely in this one. Los Angeles Chargers at New York Giants. Jackson Dart and his starting, I guess the start of Jackson Dart in this game. I think this one's pretty clear for me. I think that you can make an argument for Malik Neighbors. You can make an argument for Cam Scatabo. Again, the Chargers have been, I guess, similar to some of the other teams we're talking about, have been really good against wide receivers. Bottom two in terms of their touchdown rate allowed through the air. So while I do think Neighbors could score, he's going to see the volume. It's not the best matchup in the world. I really like Omari and Hampton to score in this game. I think he's going to get absolutely fed. So let's get Hampton in there. So Amari and Hampton, the Chargers obviously just lost Najee Harris to a torn Achilles. The Giants have given up the second most rushing TDs this year. So this is kind of one of those ones where I just don't want to overthink it. LA gave him 25 touches last week after Najee went down. So the point is here that he's getting fed, right? So we get the volume, we get the matchup, Amari and Hampton in this game. Philadelphia Eagles at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, this one to me is going to start and finish with Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts has kind of been like our touchdown king this year. He scored in every game. I think we've played him in three of 3 weeks we've had an anytime touchdown for Jalen Hurts. So that's been a great start. Also, he has just absolutely owned Tampa Bay on the ground. 4 TDs across 3 regular season meetups. So to me, this one is a no-brainer. They've allowed the 4th most rushing yards to quarterbacks as well. So I think we get a tush push in this game, but even if we don't, wouldn't be surprised if Hurts runs one from a little bit further out. If you're looking for something else in this game, there is a couple that I think are probably, I think they're priced where they should be. Obviously, Saquon, Bucky Irving, probably the most likely after Hurts. Egbuka, AJ Brown, those are some ones that I would mind taking a shot on. But to me, I think Jalen Hurts is pretty much a lock every week to score on the ground, but this week in particular, the matchup lines up as well. Tennessee Titans at Houston Texans. This is another one where if we're just looking at some of the wide receivers for Tennessee, because I do want to kind of mix in some more of the wide receiver stuff for you guys and actually give you guys some long shots that I really like as well. This one, it's a little bit harder to do that on the Tennessee side. Calvin Ridley, Ayo Manor, both of those guys, it's tough because this Houston team has really just not given up a ton to wide receivers in general, but they also just haven't given up touchdowns to the position as well. If you want a dark horse in this game, I think Nico Collins probably the most likely to score in this game. If you want a dark horse, though, I actually think that Schultz is interesting. And I'm going to tell you why. So, 5 of 6 targets last week, so nothing crazy. I think he had like 40 yards. But the Titans have been giving it up from a catch perspective to tight ends, but they also have given up a decent touchdown rate to tight ends as well. So that's my long shot. If you don't feel comfortable with that one, I think Nico Collins is most likely to score in this game. Let's talk about the Colts and the Rams. Another interesting game, right? Because I really wanted to like Kyron Williams. I really wanted to like Jonathan Taylor. But I think one of the ones that I'm trying to warm up to a little bit is trying to find these little pockets for when the wide receiver 2 really stands out. So give me Devontae Adams in this game to score. I like Devontae Adams to score in this game. Again, Indy is a team that has actually been pretty good this year. They've obviously won some games, but defensively, they're, I guess, a little bit easier to have on the boundaries. I think that if we're trying to find the most likely, it is probably Kyron Williams. So I think if you wanted to have one on each side, for me, it would be Devontae Adams and then Jonathan Taylor in this game. So those would be my picks. But if you wanted a little bit more of a multiplier, I think that Adams is always a solid bet for a touchdown. Jacksonville Jaguars at San Francisco 49ers. This is also, I mean, McCaffrey is the most likely to score, right? So you can lock McCaffrey in there for a touchdown and feel pretty good about it. But the guy that I think is really interesting is Ricky Pearsall. So if Jennings ends up not returning, if he ends up returning but is banged up, I think even if Jennings does come back this weekend, this is a matchup where Pearsall has a ton of upside. So Pearsall is going to be my pick for this one. So Ricky Pearsall, the Jaguars in general have been just bleeding fantasy points to wide receivers, especially from a target perspective, but also from a touchdown perspective. 7.8 touchdown rate against to wide receivers, but 31st in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. So I think that Ricky Pearsall to score in this one is appealing. But if you wanted just one pick, I think McCaffrey is by far the most likely to score in this game. Baltimore Ravens at Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, this one I think we can do relatively quickly. I think after Henry had some of those fumbling issues, I'd be shocked if he doesn't get into the box this week. So I'm going to go with Derrick Henry. Chicago Bears at Las Vegas Raiders. I want to give you guys another one that is a little bit of a long shot. I'm going to give you two for this game because I think this game there's one of these guys I'd be pretty confident is going to score. I think that Trey Tucker could end up doing it again in this spot. Could end up doing it again. Let's get Tucker touchdown. So we could do Tucker touchdown. No one's allowed more wide receiver or more touchdowns to wide receivers than Chicago. So I think that Trey Tucker is interesting. Also, we could do Odunze here. I think that Odunze is probably more likely to score, but I think he's at least interesting as well. Is there anyone else in this Chicago game that we would like? So we could go Ashton Genty, Rome Odunze. Ashton Genty in that offensive line, obviously, it's been a really big disappointment. I do think that if you wanted to go with a really long shot, I think that Trey Tucker is my favorite of these, just because of that matchup. This Chicago secondary has been getting absolutely destroyed. The most likely, though, from a wide receiver perspective, I think is Odunze. So I think both of these are really solid in this game. Green Bay at Dallas Cowboys. The Micah Parsons return. We could just bet Micah Parsons sack and call it a day, but this is a touchdown video. So I think that we can always feel pretty good about a Jacobs touchdown. He's one of the ones that I called out in the anytime touchdown video, so I'll call him out here. But I also think both the tight ends in this game are super interesting. So Jake Ferguson, 26 targets over his last 2 games. He's the player that's most likely to soak up targets with CD out. But the Packers are also the 3rd worst team at defending tight ends. So I really like Jake Ferguson. Tucker Kraft on the other side of this. Dallas runs a lot of cover 2 and cover 3. at a top 5 rate for both of those. Uh, you know who leads target share against those rates for Green Bay? It's Tucker Kraft, right? So I think he's going to get a lot of volume. Both of those guys would be obviously longer shot touchdown bets than Jacobs. So Jacobs is the play, but I do really like both tight ends in this game. New York Jets at Miami Dolphins. Yeah, this is another one, right? So no one's giving up more rushing TDs to quarterbacks than Miami. So Justin Fields coming back from that concussion is the pick for this game. A couple other things that I was kind of looking at. I actually really like Garrett Wilson as well. Miami has been getting absolutely shredded by wide receivers, 29th in receiving points allowed per target to wide receivers, league high catch rate, all of those good things, bottom 3 touchdown rate. So if you didn't feel comfortable with Fields with that concussion, I think you could easily go to Garrett Wilson in this one. And I think feel pretty good about the matchup, but also I think he's probably the second most likely in this game to score. So we'll add Wilson on there for you guys. Cincinnati Bengals at Denver Broncos, the second Monday Night Football game. Yeah, the one thing right off the bat is I'm not interested in any Bengals wide receivers here. Denver, 4th in points allowed per target to wide receivers. They're not giving up any touchdowns as well. So I do think we're going to see a little bit of a bounce back for Bo Nix here. We took him on a video for him to throw multiple touchdowns. So I think for me, we're going to end this one with Courtland Sutton to score. Sutton's in a really strong spot, obviously, over 50% of Denver's air yards. He dropped 118 yards last week. He nearly broke another 60-yarder if Bo Nix didn't overthrow him. So considering that the Bengals are like a bottom 5 secondary at defending outside wide receivers, I think Sutton really strong in this game. Really strong. I normally keep my anytime TD picks to my YouTube shorts, but if you guys liked this game-by-game breakdown, let me know in the comments, and maybe I'll turn this into a weekly video. See you guys tomorrow.